Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran and we got yet another update for patch 9.1 in terms of class changes, PvP changes, as well as some general changes going into this patch. One thing to note about this build of PTR, unless Blizzard has something planned for tomorrow, it does seem like the updates for classes from the PvE as well as the PvP perspective are starting to get a little bit more thin and a little bit specific. This potentially could signal that patch 9.1 is getting ready for a release sometime soon-ish, since majority of the class-based things are mostly done. Blizzard has done a lot of the testing for the raids, which classes are involved with, PvP, which have gotten a lot of updates for, as well as Mythic Pluses, which also have been getting several updates. What else is there to really test? Anyway, let's take a look at everything we have available so far, take a look at what's getting buffed and what's getting adjusted. Starting off with Demon Hunter, primarily the Havoc Demon Hunter, we are seeing some updates in terms of their survivability. Soul Rending talent, which is available for both of the specs of Demon Hunter, the tank and the DPS, will now increase your leech by 10% outside of Metamorphosis, but only by additional 20% instead of 25% inside of Metamorphosis. This would give a Demon Hunter a little bit more survivability when not using meta, particularly good for veg Demon Hunters who don't have access to Metamorphosis nearly as often as a Havoc Demon Hunter does, who can regularly dive into it thanks to the talent of Demonic and the cooldown of I-Beam being very short. They also adjusted Netherwalk to be a 6-second duration instead of a 5-second duration, which is a side buff, but also Desperate Instincts. When Desperate Instincts triggers when you're below 35% health, that blur cooldown and duration are both reduced by 50%. So if you do take the emergency defensive as a Havoc Demon Hunter, then at least it will give you back blur a little quicker. But because it is an emergency blur, it is going to be slightly shorter in duration, which I think is an interesting give and take. I wonder if Desperate Instincts is gonna have any kind of play whatsoever. The Warlock's got primarily PvP changes, with cast and circle radius being slightly bigger and now lasts a little bit longer. They also fixed an issue that prevented Unstable Affliction from contributing towards Soul Leech Absorb when Rampant Affliction's PvP talent was selected. And also, Essence Drain for Affliction only now lasts 10 seconds instead of 6, I guess to give Affliction a little bit extra help with defensives. Finally, for rogues, they adjusted slightly a legendary for the Necrolord Covenant. Unless I missed something completely off, it looks like it's a bit of a nerf because you won't be able to get nearly as many bleeds out playing this legendary. However, I still feel like it's a pretty strong legendary. It's a really cool effect, and being able to spread those bleeds more often can be maybe useful in still Mythic Pluses, maybe in PvP, but I guess Blizzard wanted to make sure that these bleeds are not too out of control. The rest of the build focused on changing up honor talents, but not in a massive way, mostly just trying to move them down a couple levels so that players, let's say you're leveling and you want to play war mode or do BGs at a lower level, you'll be able to get some of your better honor levels a little bit quicker. A majority of this list is just moving honor talents up and down in levels, mostly down, but I felt like it's not really worth covering every single one in this video. Just now that it's going to be shifting around just a little, won't really matter for max level players. Another tidbit that's been shifting around is Blizzard adding more slots where you can stick your legendaries on. With the new gear and socket system coming out in 9.1 with the patch for domination gear and domination sockets, it's almost like tier sets. They'll be kind of treated very similar to tier sets, and you can construct them with the different types of gems to create bonuses akin to tier sets. But certain pieces like helms, chest, belt, boots, shoulders, gloves, all those will have a potential for a socketed piece from the new raid. And if you're someone who's trying to max out the amount of sockets your character can wear with the new domination sockets, certain of your legendaries are going to have to be offset towards necklaces or rings or any of the other pieces that don't have a domination socket. So that's more of Blizzard just kind of moving legendaries around so that there will be more opportunity for you to craft them on other pieces. And also, you are going to be able to get a lot more Soul Ash come patch 9.1. So recrafting your legendaries on different pieces will be pretty easy once the new patch launches. But right now, it's probably a good idea to start considering some of the different domination pieces that you can get from the raid if you are going to be doing any of the PvE content, and to figure out which pieces are going to hold which legendaries for your character. Because again, you'll want to make sure that most of your domination sockets are getting used up with the domination gear. Another bit of this update has to do with the Mythic Plus Season 2 tuning, as the Season 2 affix, if you guys were not aware, is adding a kind of like Jailer's minions, mini bosses scattered throughout the dungeon that have their own passives as well as active mechanics for groups to deal with. Some of these mini bosses will increase the amount of physical damage you take, and they'll do big AoE slams and will rush at your tank with a ton of damage. Others will reduce the amount of healing your group has while also bleeding out your allies, so a very healer intensive fight. Others will simply do fire damage to the whole group while also selecting random party members and dropping pools of lava on them, which locks out those parts of the room, so you have to be very specific in your group positionals. But every time you defeat one of those jailers mini bosses or those minions, you do get Torghast powers that you can use inside of Mythic Pluses. And Blizzard spent a lot of the bulk of this update trying to balance them, as some of them were a lot stronger than others. One of the biggest things they're doing for scaling is, instead of having these powers scale with the level of the key, that means the higher the level of the key, the more damage this power does inside of that key. Instead, it'll scale off of your character's gear as well as versatility. So it'll try to take all the different aspects of your character and your loadout. The better geared you are, the more damage these powers will do. So that'll hopefully allow certain powers to be a bit more competitive against each other, as certain powers like the Phoenix Flame, which is kind of like the volcanic power granted to the player as a Torghast power to use in a dungeon called Phoenix Plume, was very similar to Twilight Devastation of last season of Battle for Azeroth with Corruptions. It just did a ton of damage to enemies, but instead of in front of you, just in a clustered area. And they kind of scaled it so it's a little bit more even. So when the choice becomes between powers, some of the weaker ones have been buffed tremendously, where they can stack their defensive benefits or offensive benefits a lot quicker, or maybe you just get more of value from them when you do perform certain tasks. So it's good that Blizzard is trying to balance these out. We don't know if this is the final list, but I really do like this whole concept, and I've actually been having a lot of fun just hopping on PTR, finding random groups to do some keys on different characters. Perfect opportunity for you to test some legendaries if you are planning on playing certain builds or trying out different specs or different playstyles in the future. But all these powers also allow you to kind of augment your character halfway through the dungeon. If, let's say, you know that there's going to be a boss that will just do a ton of damage, and as a character you just don't have a lot of defenses, picking up a shield power might be really strong. Or if you're expecting your character to hover at very low health, picking up a massive amount of leech to bring yourself up from the brink of death can also be very valuable. You have things like for tanks to choose between more self-sustained healing or taking less damage, or dishing out more damage themselves. Every time they get smacked by an enemy, they, let's say, thorns damage back at them. For healers to have more utility with more CC or more healing output, or maybe even being able to get more aggressive. I really like the idea of using these borrowed powers to augment your character, and that can be used in a variety of different ways. It just looked really early on that these borrowed powers were going to carry certain classes and specs. So rather than being a blood DK, you became Thorns DK. Rather than being a subtlety rogue, you became a Phoenix Plume rogue. So this is a good step forward in order to try to balance these things, so we're not just completely borrowed powers walking around. It's still all about the player input, or at least majority of it is player input. Very excited to test out this affix once it goes live, but this thing has been very fun to play around with on PTR. If you guys have a chance to check it out, you definitely should. Prepare yourselves for what this thing is going to play like, but overall it looks really cool. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video and all the updates we have today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you guys think about the build for this update, and do you think that signifies with a smaller pool of class updates that potentially we might be getting 9.1 very soon? Thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.